The applause was thunderous that Wednesday night on The Tonight Show, but Jimmy Fallon had no idea he was about to witness the most heartbreaking display of love he'd ever seen. The studio was packed, the roots were in perfect sync, and everything felt like another magical night of late-night television, until a question that should have been simple shattered everyone in that room. Marcus Thompson sat in the third row with his 4-year-old daughter, Lily, perched on his lap, both dressed in their Sunday best. Lily wore a bright pink dress with sparkly shoes that she kept clicking together like Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, while Marcus had on a navy blue suit that looked like it had been carefully pressed for this special occasion. To the audience, they looked like the perfect father-daughter duo enjoying their big night out. But what no one could see was the weight Marcus carried in his chest, the invisible burden of being everything to someone so small, the exhaustion of playing both parent roles every single day for the past 4 years. Jimmy was working the crowd during a commercial break, his infectious energy bouncing from person to person as he high-fived kids and chatted with families. When he spotted Lily, who was waving both hands frantically and bouncing in her father's lap, his face lit up with that genuine smile that had made him America's late-night darling. "Well, hello there, princess," Jimmy called out, making his way over to their row. "Look at those sparkly shoes. Are you going to click them 3 times and go home?" Lily giggled and immediately clicked her heels together. "Like Dorothy. Daddy says I'm just like Dorothy." "She is," Marcus said softly, his voice carrying a tenderness that caught Jimmy's attention. "She's braver than Dorothy ever was." There was something in the way Marcus said it, something deeper than typical parental pride, that made Jimmy pause. But before he could explore it further, the stage manager was calling for places, and Jimmy had to return to his mark. The show continued its usual rhythm. Jimmy delivered his monologue with perfect timing, getting laughs in all the right places. His first guest, a comedian promoting his new Netflix special, had the audience rolling with stories from the road. Everything was going exactly as planned. During the next commercial break, Jimmy decided to bring some audience members on stage for a segment called Family Portrait, where he would ask families fun questions and take a silly photo together. It was meant to be light entertainment, the kind of segment that created heartwarming viral moments. Jimmy scanned the crowd and his eyes immediately went back to Marcus and Lily. There was something about them that drew him in. Maybe it was how Lily kept whispering excitedly to her father, or how Marcus kept smoothing down her hair with such gentle care. "I think I know who's coming up here," Jimmy announced, pointing directly at them. The audience cheered as Lily clapped her hands in delight. They made their way onto the stage, Lily skipping ahead while Marcus followed with careful steps, as if he was trying to memorize every moment Jimmy knelt down to Lily's level as she reached him. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Lily Thompson. I'm 4.5, she announced proudly. 4.5. That's very important, that half," Jimmy laughed. "And what's your daddy's name?" "Marcus," Lily said, then whispered conspiratorially. "He's the best daddy in the whole world." Jimmy's heart melted a little. He looked up at Marcus, who was standing quietly behind his daughter, his eyes bright with unshed tears of pride. "That's quite an endorsement," Jimmy said. "And where's the rest of your family tonight? Mom staying home?" The question was innocent enough. Jimmy asked it dozens of times during family segments. But the moment the words left his mouth, he knew something was wrong. Marcus's face went pale, and Lily's expression shifted to something more serious than any 4-year-old should have to manage. "It's just us," Marcus said quietly, his voice barely audible over the studio noise. "Just you two?" Jimmy asked, thinking maybe he'd misunderstood. Lily looked up at her father, then back at Jimmy. With the matter-of-fact tone that only children possess when discussing life-changing truths, she said, "Mama's in heaven. She died when I was born." The studio fell completely silent. Jimmy felt like the air had been sucked out of his lungs. He looked at Marcus, whose jaw was clenched tight as he tried to maintain his composure, then back at Lily, who was looking at him with those big, innocent eyes that somehow held wisdom beyond her years. "Lily," Jimmy started, but his voice caught in his throat. "It's okay," Lily said, patting Jimmy's arm with her small hand. "Daddy says Mama loved me so much that she gave me her heart when she went to heaven. That's why I'm so brave." Jimmy felt his own heart breaking. He'd conducted thousands of interviews, handled every kind of situation television could throw at him. But this moment, this beautiful, devastating truth delivered by a 4-year-old in sparkly shoes, left him completely unprepared. Marcus stepped forward slightly, his hand gently touching Lily's shoulder. "My wife Emma died from complications during childbirth," he said, his voice steady but strained. "It's been just Lily and me ever since." The audience was frozen. You could hear the hum of the stage lights, the distant sound of traffic outside, but inside the studio, 300 people were holding their breath. Jimmy looked at this man, barely older than himself, who had been raising a daughter alone for 4 years. He thought about his own family, about how hard parenting was, even with a partner, about the luxury of shared responsibility and mutual support. And here was Marcus, doing it all by himself, somehow raising this incredible little girl who radiated joy and confidence. "Marcus," Jimmy said softly, "how do you do it?" "Do what?" "Everything. How do you do everything?" Marcus looked down at Lily, who was now examining the sparkles on her shoes, oblivious to the weight of the conversation happening above her head. "You just do," he said simply. "When someone depends on you completely, when they trust you to be their whole world, you find a way." Jimmy felt tears building in his eyes. "But don't you ever feel overwhelmed, scared?" "Every day," Marcus admitted. "Every single day I wake up terrified that I'm not enough for her, that I can't be what she needs, that I'm failing her somehow." Lily looked up suddenly. "Daddy, you're not failing. You make the best pancakes and you read all the voices in the books and you always know how to fix my toys." Marcus smiled down at his daughter, but Jimmy could see the exhaustion behind it, the weight of carrying everything alone. "She deserves so much more than just me," Marcus whispered. That's when Jimmy made a decision that would define the rest of the evening. He stood up slowly and addressed the entire studio. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice carrying across the silent room, "sometimes we get so caught up in our own problems, our own busy lives, that we forget to really see the heroes walking among us." He turned back to Marcus and Lily. "Marcus, you said Lily deserves more than just you. But can I tell you what I see? I see a little girl who is confident, kind, joyful, and secure. I see a child who talks about her mother with love instead of sadness, who calls her father the best daddy in the world. That doesn't happen by accident. That happens because someone is doing an extraordinary job." The audience began to murmur in agreement, but Jimmy wasn't finished. "And Lily," he said, kneeling back down to her level, "your daddy is right. Your mama did give you her heart, but she also left you with someone who loves you enough to be everything you need. Do you know how special that is?" Lily nodded seriously. "Daddy says I have 2 hearts. Mama's heart that makes me brave, and Daddy's heart that keeps me safe." Jimmy felt tears spill over onto his cheeks. He looked at Marcus, who was now crying openly, and made another unprecedented decision. Without consulting producers, without checking protocols, Jimmy pulled both Marcus and Lily into a hug right there on stage. "You're not just surviving," he whispered to Marcus. "You're thriving. Both of you." The audience erupted, but it wasn't the typical applause. It was something deeper, more emotional. People were standing, crying, reaching for each other. The sound filled the studio like a wave of collective recognition of love, of sacrifice, of the quiet heroism that happens every day in ordinary families. When Jimmy finally pulled back from the embrace, he kept his hands on Marcus's shoulders. "I need you to know something," he said. "You're not alone. You're sitting in a room with 300 people who see you, who respect what you're doing, who understand that being a single parent isn't just hard, it's heroic." He turned to address the camera directly. "Emma Thompson, wherever you are, your husband and your daughter are amazing. Marcus is raising the most incredible little girl, and she knows she's loved. She knows she's safe. She knows she has two hearts, yours and his, and that's making her unstoppable." Jimmy reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out something that caught the studio lights. It was a small pin, the same one he wore every night, a tiny microphone that his daughters had given him for Father's Day. "Lily," he said, "I want you to have this. It's very special to me because it reminds me every day that being a daddy is the most important job in the world, and your daddy is doing that job better than anyone." Lily took the pin with both hands, examining it carefully. "Can I give it to Daddy?" "It's yours," Jimmy said. "You can do whatever you want with it." Without hesitation, Lily turned to Marcus and held up the pin. "For you, Daddy, because you're the best daddy microphone in the world." The audience lost it completely. 300 people were on their feet, crying and laughing and applauding. Even the Roots, who had seen everything during their years on the show, were visibly moved. But Jimmy wasn't done. He walked to his desk and opened a drawer, pulling out a business card. But this wasn't just any card. It was his personal card, the one he gave to people he wanted to stay in touch with. "Marcus," he said, "I want you to have this. Not for anything official, just if you ever need someone to talk to. If you ever need a reminder that you're doing an incredible job, if Lily ever wants to call and tell me about her day. Because what you're doing matters, and I want you to know that you have people who care about you." Marcus took the card with trembling hands. "I don't know what to say." "Don't say anything," Jimmy replied. "Just keep being the amazing father you are." As the segment wrapped up and they prepared for the final commercial break, something beautiful happened. Audience members began approaching the stage, not for autographs or photos, but to share their own stories. Single mothers who understood the weight Marcus carried, fathers who had lost their wives, children who had grown up with one parent, grandparents who had stepped in to fill the gaps. The studio became an impromptu support group, a place where people who often felt alone realized they were part of a much larger community. The show ended differently that night. Instead of his usual sign-off, Jimmy looked directly into the camera and said, "If you're a single parent watching this, if you're doing it all alone, if you feel like you're not enough, you're more than enough. And you're not alone." The episode aired exactly as it happened, with no editing to soften the emotion or speed up the pacing. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Social media exploded with stories from single parents sharing their experiences. The hashtag #2hearts began trending worldwide as people shared photos and stories of families who had found ways to love deeply despite loss. But the real magic happened in the weeks that followed. Marcus received thousands of messages from viewers who had been touched by his story's single parents from around the world reached out to offer support and friendship. Children who had lost parents shared their own stories of resilience. More importantly, Jimmy kept his promise. He called Marcus regularly, not for publicity or content, but simply to check in. When Lily started kindergarten, Jimmy sent her a special backpack with her initials embroidered on it. When she lost her first tooth, he made a video call just to see her gap tooth smile. 6 months later, Marcus appeared on the show again, not as a guest, but as part of a special segment featuring single parents who were making a difference in their communities. He had started a support group for single fathers in his hometown, inspired by the response to his first appearance. That night changed my life, he told Jimmy during the follow-up interview. Not because of the attention, but because it reminded me that our story mattered, that our love mattered, that we weren't just surviving, we were creating something beautiful. Lily, now 5 and even more confident than before, proudly showed off the pin Jimmy had given her, which she wore to every special occasion. "It's my brave pin," she explained to anyone who asked. "Uncle Jimmy gave it to me because Daddy is the bravest person in the world." The segment had been intended as light entertainment, a quick feel-good moment between celebrity interviews. Instead, it became a defining moment for everyone involved. Jimmy later said it was the night he truly understood the power of his platform, not to entertain, but to connect, to validate, to remind people that their stories matter. Marcus Thompson continued raising his daughter with the same love and dedication he'd always shown, but now he did it with the knowledge that he was part of a community, that other people understood his struggles and celebrated his victories. And Lily grew up knowing something that many children never learn, that love doesn't depend on having 2 parents or a perfect family structure. Love depends on showing up every day with everything you have. Love is a father who learns to braid hair and paint fingernails because his daughter needs those things. Love is a man who reads bedtime stories in different voices because it makes a little girl laugh. Love is someone who carries 2 hearts, his own and his wife's, and somehow makes that enough. The pin still sits on Lily's dresser next to a photo of her parents on their wedding day. And every night before bed, Marcus tells her the same thing he's told her every night since she was born. "You are loved by 3 people, Mama in heaven, Daddy here on earth, and yourself. And that's all you ever need to be brave."